In this video, we are going to take a look at a man named Francis Cabot Lowell. And we're going to look at his Lowell factory and how it established the town of Lowell, Massachusetts. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a picture of Francis Cabot Lowell, but he comes along in history just after Samuel Slater. So if you haven't watched the video that I have on Samuel Slater, you may want to watch that video before you go any further with this lesson. Because in the video about Samuel Slater, we sort of explain how the Industrial Revolution gets started in America, and the whole thing gets started with textile mills. Now, just a quick review. Textile mill is a very small factory that is built right next to water, and the factory harnesses the water power from the water source nearby to turn a wheel, which is used to spin thread. Alright, so we're going to take cotton and we're going to spin that into thread inside our textile mill, and that is something that Samuel Slater, who was from England, brought over to America, and he got started in the New England area. And after Samuel Slater, other guys come along and they start their own textile mills, but none were more famous or more successful than the one that Francis Cabot Lowell came up with. So Lowell is going to use the same concept that Samuel Slater used, except he is going to take things a step further. Instead of just taking cotton and spinning it into thread inside his small factory, Francis Cabot Lowell wants to expand his factory, and he wants to take cotton and turn it into cloth, into woven cloth under one roof. And in order to do this, he is going to have to establish a large complex, much like the one we see in this picture here. That's going to consist of more than just one small textile mill. So basically, Francis Cabot Lowell is taking Samuel Slater's idea, and he's going to expand it further and make it into not just one factory, but a series of factories that is going to grow until it becomes a town, and the town is going to take its name after Francis Cabot Lowell, and so it will be known as Lowell, Massachusetts. As Lowell's business began to expand, he knew that he was going to need a large workforce. And so he started turning to the cities, looking for workers. And in Lowell's opinion, the best workers were young women, young female girls ages 15 to 35 who were typically single. He would hire them to come and work in his complex, helping him turn cotton into woven fabric was going to take a lot of workers in a lot of different departments. And so as his business began to develop and expand, he realized that he was going to have to create a place for his workers to live. But instead of creating houses for families, he wanted the women to remain single, so that they could focus on work and have more time to put into his factories. And so instead of building homes, small houses, he decided to build what's known as boarding houses. Now I'm outlining one of the boarding houses here. This was not like a house. Think of it more as like an apartment, or even probably more accurately like a college dorm, that has, basic amenities, basic things there. So you've just got a place to sleep. You've got, bathrooms, probably a kitchen that they all share. But it's not a home the way that, we would think of today. It would be more like a college dorm room setting. And part of the reason that Lowell did this was because it was, of course, cheaper to house a whole bunch of people into a small area. But he also wanted the girls to focus more on work and to remain single. And he didn't pay them very well. So the girls worked really long hours and they were paid very little for a lot of work. And even though this was the case, some still saw this as a good opportunity because at the time there were just not a lot of opportunities for young women to have jobs, to make money, and to be independent. And so a lot of girls who grew up in Boston or some of these other towns would go and they would take a job at the Lowell factory, and they would live there in the dorm rooms in the boarding houses for several years, and they would save their money, and a lot of times they would leave, and some of them would go on and get married, and other times they would use their money to do other things. But some did see it as a good opportunity, even though they were not paid very well. Over time, groups are going to get together, they're going to form unions, they're going to go on strike, they're going to negotiate better work conditions and better wages. But these factories were some of the first factories, and so it would take a little bit of time before there were regulations to put in rules for people like Francis Cabot Lowell. And in addition to not being paid very well, the women had rules. In order to live in these boarding houses, they didn't get to do just anything that they wanted. They had rules. And just a few of those rules were, number one, they had to go to church. He wanted them to attend church. He didn't want them out partying and drinking, so no alcohol was allowed on this premises where they lived. And so Francis Cabot Lowell, he had a lot of control over the workers' lives, not only while they were at work, but also in their homes and where they lived. He also had a lot of control over them. And so, as we're going to see over time, workers are going to fight for their rights. But early on, the people who owned the businesses had most of the leverage.